Well, ar an gédal sias tá fír cin fóitiúil goléir agus áthas saram mar fatrún den nála a go raibh sibh an tíocht. Is trí ar an gédal sias trí slím le bhá sachtan abarató genta agé san abarató I leanúnta ar san cosmuinta na héireann. Today is a very special day, one that brings us all together to celebrate National Literacy Awareness Week. And I'm delighted to be able, as President of Ireland here in Orson-Uachtaráin, to give recognition to the importance of this work. I am very pleased to be patron of the National Adult Literacy Agency, and I think the agency is such an important, vital resource for helping those who are experiencing literacy challenges. And through your work, I think you have brought hope and opportunities to so many citizens, and you've encouraged participation. And I think in that way you're extending citizenship and the possibilities of citizenship to so many people, and particularly those who for any one of a number of reasons may have been deprived of the opportunity of achieving literacy skills at an earlier period of their lives. I think that experiencing literacy difficulties, it can create an atmosphere that is dark and lonely for so many people. And I want particularly to welcome those who have taken on the challenge of addressing this and who have been sharing their accounts and with others. And it's going to be such a powerful example. I think that emerging from illiteracy is a journey into the light, and one that completely changes one's life. Very many years ago, when I was in my other life as a politician, I remember having a great friend of mine who bought horses in England, I better not say his name because we were very good friends, and he bought horses and trained them back for all sorts of carriage work and others in Galway City. And he told me how he managed in England, and he was often be going round and round the same roundabout, and not knowing when to turn off. And he brought his grandson with him, and the grandson would in fact tell him which exit they were to take from the roundabout. And I had my great friend Alf McLaughlin, who was one of the first people. He set up the first group dealing with literacy in Galway, was of great assistance to him. And it was a life-changing experience, as it is for everyone. But each and every one of you, I've been looking at the video as well, and the messages that you shared. You're a great inspiration to others, because it's a very difficult, it takes a great act of courage to actually step forward and say, I'm going to change this aspect of my life. So I want to commend you for your courage and your determination. Eamon Delaney is over there, and I was just looking at Eamon's particular story, for example, before I came in. And when he describes it, first of all, I think his account of his childhood and his journey through the National Adult Literacy Agency's work, I think is very, very, very moving. And the dignity and honesty with which Eamon shared it in its detail, and describing something that is not easy for anyone to do, the sense of shame, frustration and failure that reading difficulties created for him, was deeply moving, as is the strong sentence that sums it all up, is that he wanted to be a role model for his children and to be able to participate in their education. And I think all of those stories are telling us the same thing, that they're examples really of people who have taken the courage and who have persevered in the face of difficulty. And I think his will to succeed is a powerful impetus for anyone who may feel discouraged. If I might just say another group of people that I remember from my time in representing people in Galway West were some members of the travelling community who were going to prison. And I actually know from my visits to prison as well that many people went into prison, unfortunately, illiterate, and came out drug dependent. And in fact, achieving literacy skills is part of being able to protect yourself, but then moving on to participate. And I think as well those in Nala who were at this for a long time will acknowledge the role that the libraries have played and how helpful that they have been in promoting the schemes. So to all of those who have shared their story, I commend their courage, and I think that you doing so in the public realm will help reduce the stigma that is often blocking people from coming forward and dealing with their personal difficulties. As well as that, there's a very close fit between literacy difficulties and marginalisation, inequality, disenfranchisement and social justice. In fact, we must remember that in relation to participating in the voting system itself had certain kinds of difficulties associated with it. But I think to know that people have had the vision and the sense of possibilities, the extraordinary moment in each one of the biographies where people say, I can do this, and that it enables them to move on to what is not just the acquisition of a skill, but enlightenment and empowerment. Globally, achieving global literacy is one of the Sustainable Development Goals, and that will be a very important contribution to sustainable development and the reduction of global poverty. Also, it's something important to realise as well, and I was associated with it. I said the biggest achievement, I think, in any one country would have been in the period of Ernesto and Fernando Cardenal in Nicaragua, where the UNESCO award for the reduction of people who are suffering from illiteracy was the most significant of any particular country. And that was in the 1980s. But I can tell you what one of the achievements, I remember being in a rural area in Nicaragua, and the elections were taking place, and the woman who was in charge of the polling booth was so struck by her new ability to read that she insisted on reading out the Electoral Act in its totality. And there was about a half a mile of a queue, and somebody had to say to her at the end, you might just concentrate on the paragraphs about the ballot paper. But it was the sense of excitement and joy of actually now being able to use all these words, read them, and actually articulate them. And I saw that, and that huge changes it's made. And of course it's related, not just to reduction participation in society, but equally, I remember when the Jesuits were being attacked in Salvador for it, it was because people then participated and wanted justice, and they wanted security for their families, and they wanted different forms of life. I think that here in Ireland we have made great advances in relation to adult literacy, but we're worse off, in fact, than many of the countries in Europe. With 1 in 5, I think that on the recent OECD survey, 1 in 6 Irish adults are at or below level 1 on a 5-level literacy scale. So there is much to be done. I think that the National Adult Literacy Agency's campaigns, and I'm glad that it's getting recognition, the Take the First Step campaign and the Learner Ambassador programme are very, very important. I've no doubt that these initiatives will be instrumental in changing that OECD figure. I spoke not so long ago to the Irish Reading Association of Ireland, and I quoted at that time the words of the great champion of civil rights, Frederick Douglass, when he said, when you learn to read, you will be forever free. I actually often thought, when I look back on all the different speeches I've given and ones I've read in different places, that if every child was able to read, able to swim and have access to a musical instrument, you'd have gone a long way towards creating this basis of security for life. But if you take Douglas's words, when you learn to read, you will be forever free, it's at the heart of the journey through life. And reading as well, it's a marvellous, you will never be alone reading is fundamental. And it gives great pleasure, but it also is fundamental to our independence and our sense of well-being. And it also gives us the capacity for reflection, and it widens our perspective. It's very interesting when the debate came about the printing press first, and people said, should you extend the capacity to read? And when the opponents said the difficulty is people will not only read the Bible, they'll read Tom Paine's pamphlets as well. And I think that reading is a fundamental to democracy. And literacy was what made possible the participation of classes of different and excluded groups in the parliamentary process itself. In the digital age, and I know that NALA have now extended digital literacy as part of the campaign, is terribly important. I have to say myself that I want to just encourage institutions in Ireland to take account particularly of people who are older and people who are experiencing difficulty in relation to digital literacy. If you make no effort to help such people make the transition, you are abusing the technology. And very often, it may be one of the disappointing features of institutional behaviour in Ireland, is there is room for concern about the way we have been speaking to each other, and that changed in the last couple of decades. There is an enormous value, and people who visit this country notice it, when people are spoken to with concern, care, compassion and kindness. I think as well, the digital literacy group will be very, very important. I saw a great example of it in the Aran Islands in Inisheer, where young people were in fact giving keyboard skills to some of their grandparents and others, and the older people were sharing the heritage of the island. So you saw it was happening at both ends. Both generations were helping each other. And having no intergenerational conflict is a fantastic advantage in Ireland. The more the generations are able to speak to each other, the better society is. Now I want to finish by making one remark myself about literacy. I have been in a number of speeches saying recently, and I intend to develop it, that in the exact same way as having literacy was important to participation in the political process that gave us parliaments and to those who participate in them, having fiscal and economic literacy, understanding what is in fact happening in relation to options that are justified on the basis of fiscal imperatives, or economic literacy, is going to be just as important. I think that if we were sharing, if we had widespread fiscal and economic literacy, we would not have the difficulties in the European street that we have at the present time. In exactly the same way as we had abuses in the medieval period, people have suggested that the origin of the world itself. In the same way, the notion that matters are too complicated for ordinary citizens to understand is an outrageous anti-democratic sentiment. And therefore I think that that is probably the next area into which people will move beyond digital literacy is fiscal and economic literacy. And it has the capacity to, in the European sense, restore connection with the European street, and it has the capacity internationally to enable us to provide new forms of global economics and new forms of connection between ecology, ethics, economy and society. But the important reason why I wanted to be here as patron of NALA is to thank you all for the work that you're doing and to wish you every success as it continues. Is mean na ma weekas o cria gwalia basacht an medatá shivayana ach akahoir the cos muinta na tira sha is it san beda nach levan shan saka chiltashtak na buntash de winin le veanan lev is kamala shim gwim rakas banak tarid an tauki is gokra the mega shulagis na toglinu with a fui shulagi. Thank you so much for coming to make me to nice with you.